So I've become really fortunate on the Mastering Midlife podcast. I get to pick and choose my guests. I have about 10 requests a week that come through, all wonderful people, but I'm really curating very carefully the conversation that we like to have, which is real life, boots on the ground, the hero's journey. What have people done, how they done it, and how can it apply to me kind of conversations. And I'll give a plug to Interview Valet, because they have really come up with some really good guests for me. So when my next guest, Todd Palmer, came up in my feed, I really took notice. This is a guy who really has been there and done that, and he has something to share. So I was really thrilled. So I'll give you his formal introduction. Todd Palmer is an excellent executive coach, keynote speaker, renowned thought leader, and author and CEO who is committed to helping business owners tackle their obstacles and clear their path to success. He's just been wildly successful. He specializes in helping leaders join the mission statement of the organization to core personal values while addressing fears, doubts, and imposter syndrome, which is really near and dear to us. We all know what we need to do, but how do we get ourselves to do it? And I love that he brings that to the show. He's the author of the book, The Job Search Process: Find and Land a Great Job in Less Than in 6 weeks or less. And he's writing a new book, From Suck to Success, which I just can't wait for him to share with you. Todd, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, Mark, it's absolutely my delight and pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
You and I were chatting beforehand, and we were talking about baseball, the fact that we're both baseball fans, and just the way that you go about helping your CEOs and the people that the entrepreneurs that you work with, is it's both mindset, it's the internal, it's how do we get them to be who they need to be before they can go do what they need to do. So tell me your origin story. Why do you care about this stuff, and why are you doing this in the world?
Oh, well, going back to the title of my new book, From Suck to Success, I used to really suck. In fact, I was really good at sucking and really bad at succeeding. Um, quick background, I guess, is, I was an entrepreneur. I started when I was 27, launched my company, Diversified Industrial Staffing in the Metro Detroit area. We were a generalist staffing company. We did temporary help. We were, anything for a buck. If you needed a body and I needed to feed my kid, I would try to go find that person for you. Flash forward about 9, 10 years into my entrepreneurial journey. I love the fact that you call it the entrepreneurial journey, because it is definitely a journey. I woke up and I absolutely despised the business I built. My imposter syndrome was rampant. I call it my itty bitty shitty committee, and it was telling me how much I sucked, how unsuccessful I was, what a poor leader I was, and how I was letting the world down because I was not delivering on what I needed to do. To the point where I allowed employees to stay in my company way too long, allowing a toxic culture to seep within and throughout the organization. And I let my clients run the show. If they wanted extended payment terms, I gave them a little to no margin, because I was chasing, my definition of external success was a $20 million company. We were running at about 2.5 million at the time. And I didn't understand financial literacy. In September of 2006, my accounting people come to me and saying, you're $600,000 in debt. You're going to run out of money by the end of the year, and you're basically sunk. And I was ignoring it. I wasn't going in. Like I said, my imposter syndrome was paralyzing me. So finally, I put my pride and ego aside, and I raised my hand and I got help, and I hired a coach. And within a couple of weeks, I learned some quick down and dirty financial literacy. I made the very difficult and painful decision to clean house, fired my entire company in one day, and started over. And over the next 10 years, we paid off all the $600,000 in debt in full. And we made the Inc. 5000 as one of America's fastest growing businesses, not once, not twice, but 6 times.
What was the shift? Where did you shift from sucking to actually being a positive force in your business?
Oh, with the help of my coach. It was all for me. It was all mindset that was holding me back. It was that itty bitty.
But describe mindset. Mindset's a concept. What shifted in you?
What shifted basically within me was recognizing and realizing I was my own bottleneck. So, as a coach, I work with my clients to basically do 2 things: remove the bottlenecks within the organization. And if you think of a great bottle of wine, where's the bottleneck? Right at the top. It was me. And then I have to make it easy for my customers to work with me and easy for my employees to work for me. So I had to work on me. So my coach says to me, he was a Division I athlete before he became a CEO. He sold a $550 million company. And we're talking one day, and he's like, you can, he was a D1 golfer. He was a D1 athlete. Says, you can only focus on the shot before you, not the shot you took, or not the shot that's up in, down the fairway. And he goes, you live, my friend, either in what you didn't do right or what you might do wrong in the future. Let's just focus on today. So
Oh, that's so good.
so we focused on, and he called it the 5 positives every day, because I like literally was breaking it down into bite-sized segments. So my first positive every day is I got out of bed. I know this probably sounds to your listeners like, oh my God, how bad off was this guy? Well, when you're essentially nearly clinically depressed, getting out of bed is a big deal.
In the middle of COVID, in the middle of social unrest, in the middle of this presidential election, everybody's like, I got out of bed, I brushed my teeth, I combed my hair. Win.
Yeah. It's like the opening of that Beatles song. I got up, got out of bed, dragged a comb across my head. That was the start of a good day. Then he insisted you've got to do something positive, because as a lot of entrepreneurs, what we're going to do is we're going to get lost in drugs and alcohol. We're going to get lost in distractions. We're going to get lost in external things. He goes, you got to do something good for you. We've got to get your brain firing differently. He used to call it my doom loop. We got to change the tape in your head. So I need you to commit to going to the gym. So the dopamine is going to fire up. You're going to start your day in a positive mindset. And we just started cranking through. And at the end of the day, I had to turn in a report card to him of the 5 positive things I did. I had to be held accountable, because as entrepreneurs, a lot of us want to be our own bosses, but that's because we don't want to be held accountable. So then he made me
slow down right there. So that is so good. That is so good. It's like, I don't want to, the impetus to be an entrepreneur comes from wanting to create something, wanting to do something that will make an impact, right? Get paid for my wits. But it's also the secret thing is I don't want to be held accountable to somebody else's thing. So I always say I'm the shittiest sales manager I have ever had. When I've worked for asshole sales managers, I've made millions of dollars. Working for myself, I'm not going to do what I don't fucking want to do.
Right,
so,
exactly.
So this is so good.
Yeah, so the mindset shift was multiple phases, multiple pieces. So ultimately, it was getting unstuck in my head, seeing a better vision, and focusing, doubling down on that. We're also recognizing that I can't expect to know how my narrative and my story is going to end. How is my hero's journey going to end? What I can have is a massive intention of what I'd like. I'm $600,000 in debt. I can't say I know exactly how I'm going to get out, but I'm going to put my intention out there to find a way to work through that with my coach's help, pivoting away from just seeking revenue to seeking margin. And then his program is, I'm going to hold you accountable because you're doing an awful job of holding yourself accountable. So now, flash forward to today, tell my clients very simply, here's what I'll help you do. Here's the way it's going to work, and I'm going to hold you accountable. Well, I don't need you to. I said, yeah, you do. Well, how do you know? Because I used to be you. So now, as a coach, I'm sure you do the same thing. It's like, I've been on my hero's journey. I'm now the guide of your hero's journey. And part of it is what do they say? Don't bullshit a bullshitter. Like, I know you will not hold yourself accountable, because I won't hold myself accountable, because you wouldn't be engaging my coaching services if you could do that. So let's just cut the crap. I'm going to hold you accountable. And here's the magic of all of this. And this is what my coach did for me. He held me accountable to what I wanted, not what he thought I needed to do, because he had a very different vision of things. He goes, you tell me what you want. We're going to make a list, and we're going to hold you accountable to it. And I said to him, I don't want to file bankruptcy. It will embarrass me in front of, I was a single dad. It will embarrass me in front of my child. I tell my kid, my son's name is Tyler, and I say, listen, we don't quit things. And I knew in my head, my itty-bitty committee was telling me, you haven't done everything. There's more you can do. Oh, all right. And my coach says, let's double down on that. So I'm not going to file bankruptcy. I want to get out of debt. And I want to provide a great living for myself and my son. And he goes like, cool. I'm going to hold you majorly accountable. To the accountability piece. And this is what so many entrepreneurs miss. We should be focused, especially in the early stages. And I'm saying, under 2 million, under 5 million, depending upon your space, you should be focused on money making activities. Because I was really good at being the chief firefighter. I'd make a whole list of things, fires I needed to put out.
My distraction is content creation. I am a machine at content creation, right? So instead of going and making that phone call, or closing that deal, I will go create a new video that is so useful to people.
And but then it's awareness around it. So he's like, what did you do today? I'm like, well, I did this, I did this, I did. He's like, you didn't do anything to make any money.
Exactly.
I'm like, well, but I got a whole list of things done. We ultimately, over the several years, I worked with this coach for 7 years. Over that 7 years, we figured out I was really good at being a great firefighter. I could put all the fires out. What I discovered was I was also the chief arsonist. I was really good at creating chaos and starting the fire so I could go have something to do.
This awareness of who you are and what you do in your organization is so important, because once you get conscious, now you can start addressing it. I have an accountability partner ever since my friend Katie Nelson, who is a sales coach, and has her own business coaching entity. She said, would you be willing to be my accountability partner? I'm a little scared of you. I said, that's funny. I'm a little scared of you too. I think we sheepishly shook on it. And for 2 years now, we've been accountability
Love
partners,
it.
doubled my revenue. But not only did it double my revenue, I now do, because I've been a successful coach for a long time. I have been awful at running my business so that I'm looking at profit and loss. I'm looking at cash flow. I'm looking at what those things. So it took an accountability partner in order for me to actually make myself look at the numbers and look at those things. So it's invaluable. I think you're right on the money.
Well, I think so much of it. So this is the analogy I give my clients. We do a whole lot more for others than we will do for ourselves. And I had to figure that out. Like when my coach and I work, he's like, well, if you had to go home and tell your son you didn't do any money making activities, how do you think that's going to go? It was
Get you
right
right in your feels.
So what I say to my clients is like, think about it like this. Imagine you're driving in your brand new BMW by yourself. How are you going to drive? Well, it goes to 120. Let's see if we can get there, right? That's how we drive when we're alone. Imagine you're driving your new car with your wife and your kids in the car. Well, I drive much more conservatively. I'll drive much safer. I'm a better driver with others in the car. Think about your business. Think about your life. Think about what you do and how you will behave when others are watching, when you have an accountability. When eyes are upon us, we choose and behave differently. That's what an accountability coach does, from the way I do it.
Got it. I want to get to your new book in a second, because I wanted you to plug that, because it just sounds so good. And I know it's coming out at the beginning of the year. But you and I talked beforehand, and one of the topics that you talk about is aligning the 12-step programs of Alcoholics Anonymous and NA and DA and all those to your business. And I'm 30 years sober. I'm familiar with it, and it's near and dear to my heart. So I'm curious, how do you do that?
Well, first of all, congratulations. I'm sure your life and your family's lives are much better with the way you are now than maybe where you were 30 years ago.
I was homeless and living in my truck. So, everything is gravy from here.
For sure. And it is such an amazing thing that, when you go through the 12 steps, part of it is acceptance. Part of it is dealing with not having other people co-sign your bullshit. And same thing for an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs often, and I've got some clients in 12-step programs, and they often will just call me not their business coach, but their business sponsor, because I hear about the fight they had with their wives and their kids. Oh, and by the way, their business, because it's really work-life integration. Wherever as an entrepreneur we show up, there we are.
No question.
Well, same thing as if you've got challenges with drugs and alcohol, wherever you show up, there you are. You're an addict or an alcoholic, wherever you go. It's how we manage it.
And now porn has replaced all of it, right? So
right.
People are losing hours of the day, and then the shame and the heaviness that comes with all of that.
Absolutely. And then you throw on technology, and you throw all the different things that we're really learning about how we escape. So we escape through medicating, we escape through distraction, we escape through porn, we escape through tech, all that stuff. Entrepreneurship is honestly, in many cases, no different. So when I look at my story, I was a great entrepreneur until I wasn't. I was a rugged individualist until it didn't work for me, because I was often seeking external validation to fill the emptiness within me. Where did my emptiness come from? Childhood wounding. Where do a lot of alcoholics get their issues from? Childhood wounding. My childhood wound wasn't even done to me on purpose. I know we had clients share horror stories of their childhood. I don't even profess to be in that space, but my story was really simple.
That's where I go. I like to delve into the deep, dark corners of the basement of people's psyche.
Oh, and I so funny you call it the basement. I'm going to take you into the basement, and then we're going to take you back up into the sunshine, because we got to go down before we can go up. So for me, it was when I was 5 years old, my dad passed away. He was 45, and he didn't, as a child, you feel abandoned. At least I felt abandoned.
Sure.
Well, then my mom has to go return to work. She'd been a stay-at-home mom for every day of my life. My older brother.
Abandonment times 2.
No, then my older brother got an athletic scholarship and moved out of state. My older sister was getting married, and we knew she was moving out of state, so it was kind of a big celebration. So within 90 days, all 4 of my primary caregivers were gone. As a 5-year-old, what I learned was I can't rely on others, and I can only rely on me. which makes it a great rugged individualist. We can take anything, alcohol, drugs, to an extreme. Entrepreneurship to an extreme. So I'm a rugged individualist. I don't need any help. I got this all figured out. I can be HR. I can be accounting. I can be sales. I can be ops. I got it all.
Which got you successful in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Absolutely. Until it doesn't work. When I can build a job that way, but I can't build a business that way. But nobody told me that.
Dude, you have just illustrated the whole crux of mastering midlife. When I talk about this, I say what got you through your 20s and 30s, what got you successful, that drive from being 5 years old is what made you survive and what got you through.
For sure.
Then it turns on you. Welcome to mastering midlife. Now, how are you going to deal with things?
And I didn't know, and no one talked about it, and I had no clues around it. And I'm like, why is everybody like, why do my employees hate me? Well, because I would give them a task, I would give them responsibility, I'd give them empowerment in quotes, and then I would take it away from them because you don't do it as good as I do it. You don't do it as good as I do it, and I can do it all. And then what happened? Mastering midlife, I became very resentful. Like, why am I paying you and I'm doing your work? And it just stacked up and stacked up and stacked up. And I kept thinking, going back to childhood, my mom, who did the best she could with what she had and the skill set she owned, said, you know what, here's the definition of a great life, son. Go to college, get married, start a family, and just be happy. You know what happiness is? Happiness is a spike of dopamine. If you want to be happy, go eat some chocolate. So satisfaction is the journey. And I'm talking to my coach about this. I still use a coach. So I use a neuroscientist out of literally an MD out of the West Coast, because I'm still trying to figure out who I am. But then the great for my clients is when they say, well, why should I hire you? I said, because I practice what I preach. I drink my own Kool-Aid and I use a coach because I don't have myself mastered either. But it's that satisfying journey that we don't think about. And if you think about, again, going back to your question, the parallels between the behavior of an alcoholic and the behaviors of an entrepreneur, we're always looking for the next deal. We're always looking for the next high. I'm never satisfied. I need more. We drive our family members out of our lives because we're consumed with whatever is owning our lives, whether it's entrepreneurship or whatever. And it's often because, at least this is what I found, is there's often a deep, dark emptiness within us on both sides of that equation. And until we figure that out, and until I had to own it, I'm like, oh my gosh, because you make the ink list the first time, you're like, none of my entrepreneur friends have ever done this. I must be a pretty big deal. I was for about 24 hours, and then nobody cares. Like, it's not like the movies where I can just ride. My fans will carry me off into the sunset.
Right.
Make it 5 times, 6 times. Nobody really cares at the end of the day. What they care is, are you a good person? Do you express gratitude? Are you humble? All these different things. But when pride and ego, which often prevent people from asking for help, either as a business coach or a leadership coach, or to get sober or cleaned up, it's pride and ego that prevents us. Recognizing that, I think, again, crosses over both parallels.
So here's what's interesting is in the fact that you're actually on the show and we're having a conversation. That part of what you do comes through for me loud and clear. That's what I saw in your profile that was different from all the other profiles that came my way. Is not only the expertise in running a business, like you have the background and you have the teeth to be able to say, I can help you run your business. But then you went into all the stuff that goes in behind running the business. How do you, so like, let's do a marketing 101 on doing your inner work as an entrepreneur. How do you attract people into and enroll people into saying, no, we're going to work on the nuts and bolts of your business, but we got to do this inner work in order for you to be really, truly successful and satisfied and not sabotage yourself? How do you get people to actually believe that?
Love the question. So first thing I think we have to do is we have to create a safe space for people to show up and be seen. I did an entrepreneurship program in a maximum security prison for 3 days. And they did a brilliant exercise where they called the line exercise. There's a line that runs right through the middle of the room. 2 lines, I'm sorry. And if the story and the narrative over the loudspeaker applies to you, step to the line. It was amazing that all the entrepreneurs in the room, all the coaches in the room, and all the people who were incarcerated in the room stepped in line for many of the same things until they didn't. Meaning our lives are very similar. There's my life and your life and that life of that person who's incarcerated. At one point, we're very, very similar until there's a divergence. So what I often do to get people engaged and to get people to trust me and to create that safe space is I show up with 3 things. ATV, authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability. Without that, it doesn't work. I have to show up and I have to tell the very worst day of my life, September 9th, 2006. It's kind of like, hi, I'm Todd. I'm an entrepreneur kind of process. And here's the worst day of my life. And the worst day of my life was when I walked in and I fired my entire company because I had failed as the leader. They're all I statements. And in firing them, I was able to eventually to turn my business around. I couldn't keep them because I couldn't pay them. I couldn't pay them because I allowed the business to get $600,000 in debt. That's on me. When I lead that, whether I'm on stage or on a podcast or wherever, if it lands with somebody, then hiring a coach, it's a relationship. It's an intimate relationship. We share my clients share things with me that they don't share with their spouses, with their business partners, with their staff. They've got to trust that the secrets die within me. Well, if I'm going to tell you about the worst thing I've ever done, I had a person come up to me one time who hired me as her coach, and she's like, you're my guy. I'm like, nice to meet you too. She's like, oh, you were $600,000. I'm only $100,000 a day. You were much worse than me. You can totally help me. And I'm just dying. She was so honest. I said, oh my gosh, how did you get there? She's like, and she's telling me this story. I said, well, how many people know you? Nobody in my world knows I'm 100. Well, aren't you married? Yeah. You mean your husband doesn't know? Nope. You're the only person who knows. Now help me out. So that's how I do it. I stand up and I say, I'm just like you. I say, I've been where you are. I say, I've gotten through it. I just did an interview the other day where I said, I've been there, done that, survived it. And what I survived, first was me. Second was the recessions. Third was COVID. And who knows what the fourth thing's going to be. But we've been around a while, like guys like you and I. So here we are, and we can be of service to others. It's really about being of help to our communities.
That puts such a depth to what you do. A lot of people who are healers and make really substantial impact in the world have their vehicles, right? So your vehicle is helping people with their businesses. What you really do is transform themselves and their lives.
Oh, totally.
But you use their businesses as a vehicle, right?
Yep.
I tell people all the time, I sell promotions, I sell leadership skills, right? I sell profits, and what I really do is transform people's lives, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but I don't lead with that, but they hear that in what I do, and that's what I hear in yours.
It's so much so. So I was so blessed. 12 years ago, I meet this guy at a conference. His name was Simon Sinek. No one had ever heard of him. His entire business was a marker and a big pad of paper, and he would walk around and draw the golden circle. So a friend of mine brought him to a conference we were attending, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you are amazing. I mean, he hadn't done his TED Talk yet. He had books, literally, and he talks about. So I'm part of a group called the Gathering of Titans, and he talks about us in his book that we pressed him. You go, you're awesome. Go write a book. He's like, okay. So it was interesting to give to him. But what he gave to me, I spent 2 years with him to figure out two words. My purpose in life, not just in business, but in life, is to improve lives. So if I can be in the grocery store, or if I can be working with a client, I can be on a podcast like yours, and I can improve someone's life by something I offer or something I share or an idea they get, then it's a great day. And what a simple formula. It doesn't require money, doesn't require travel, it just requires the ability for me to show up authentic, transparent, and vulnerable, tell stories, because you probably know better than most. Storytelling is the greatest sales vehicle ever. And either it lands with somebody or it doesn't. And if it doesn't land with somebody, that's okay. I had somebody reach out to me. Hey, I saw you speak 4 years ago. This one thing you said keeps rattling around in my brain. Can we have a conversation? So you just never know.
Yeah, for me, when someone says, I met you like 3 years ago, you were such a dick to me. I was like, really? They said, yeah, it changed my life. I'm like, oh, good, cool. Good. I like a person after person is just say their encounter with me was unpleasant, and they could not stop thinking about it. And then they came around, and I'm like, thank God the second part, because I really don't like to think of myself as that kind of person.
It's sometimes it's confronting that brutal reality. Sometimes that's what we have to do is like, I'm going to hold the mirror up. And sometimes when I hold the mirror up to my clients, what they see, they don't like. And it's crazy because they yell at me for holding up the mirror to them.
Yeah.
And I said, well, all I'm doing is a mirroring exercise. So everything I'm saying to you, you've already said. Do you realize that?
Yeah.
So going back to your question about the parallels between entrepreneurship and drugs and alcohols, often we do things because we have a lot of inward driven, self-focused internal hatred of oneself. we can get that out. We can talk about it. We can uncouple that, talk about the pink elephant within. Magic can happen.
It's simply amazing how many of us in our 40s, 50s, 60s are still running our lives from the 5-year-old.
Yeah,
It
right, right,
sounds
right.
too touchy feely. It sounds, like I don't want to go in there, but that's where the key is. So cool. So let's
Absolutely.
shift gears and talk about your new book, because I'm really fascinated by it. I thought it was already out when I was doing research on you, but it's not. Tell me what's the impetus of the new book and what do you want to do with it?
Well, so the name of the book is called From Suck to Success, A Guide to Transformative Entrepreneurship. The first half of the book is a lot of things we're talking about already. It's the mindset shift we need to do. Tell a lot of stories. I tell my story. I tell the story of my friend Brian Scudamore of 1-800-GOT-JUCK and how he was able to get out of his head. I talk about entrepreneurs that people have never heard of, and because there's a common theme. The common theme is we all get stuck.
Mm.
The common theme is we often don't know we're stuck until we're really stuck. And then we have to find external help, whether it's a peer networking group like an EO or a YPO, whether it's hiring a coach, whether it's being part of a mastermind group to get us unstuck. Okay, now I'm unstuck. Now what do we do? Which ties into the second half of the book, which is how to apply basic business principles to get us to focus on margin, not revenue, to hire for DNA, not for resume. And some of the things that I learned, and I also taught my clients, even when I was owning the recruiting business, people would say, there's not enough skilled tradespeople anymore. Well, I get that. We did a lot of manufacturing hiring at the time, but maybe we can hire someone with great DNA, not resume, and you can groom them and train them
Mm.
and get the client. But again, going back to how the client looks at the world, you get this 65-year-old plant manager. I started off on the floor and I had to grow up in the company. I said, great story. Why don't you hire Jimmy, make him the next version of you, pass on your knowledge,
Brilliant.
transfer that piece. The guy goes, wow, I never thought of it. I never thought of it like that. So it's often the greatest part about being a coach is the joy of practicing massive curiosity. All I do is ask you a bunch of questions about why you want what you want and why aren't you doing what you want to do. So we kind of theme that massive curiosity through the entire book. And at the end of each chapter, there's what should be your insights,
Mm.
what can be your action steps, and what are your to-dos, and how can we get you where you want to go.
Beautiful. When does that come out?
That should be out January and February of 2021. Actually, the rest of today, I should be wrapping up the final edits.
Nice.
And it's and I'm so blessed. I've got so many people who've just generously given their stories, given of their time. Even my coach has even volunteered to write the foreword of it, which is, he said to me, he's like, I'm so honored you asked me. I've been with, his name is Dr. Danny Friedland. I've been with Danny, God, we're going on 8 years now. So I had one coach for 7 years, another coach for 8 years. And he's like, I, I see all the work we've done. I see
Mm.
all the things we've done throughout your book. And it's so rewarding for me to know I can impact someone like I have with you. And it's just, I said, oh, truly the gift of your skills and talents is totally received within me. And I want to share that with the world. So that's what the book is hopefully going to do for people. And it's going to help others recognize that, being an entrepreneur it's like Shark Tank is an artificial version of entrepreneurship. I argue, we don't all walk in and Mark Cuban isn't all going to give us $10 million.
Sure.
And that, because he's, that's condensed into 15 minutes. I've got friends who've been on Shark Tank who've gotten money, like, oh my God, then the real world the real work starts. I got, this team's bugging me and this team's driving me. This team's holding me accountable. I didn't know I had to be held accountable.
Winning Shark Tank is the starting line, not the
Yes.
finish line, right? So totally. So this is going to come out in about somewhere around in December. So your book should be coming out pretty soon after this.
Yeah.
After your book is out, I would love for you to come back and talk specifics. Now that I know that you're a real person who of substance, again, I guard my microphone.
As you should. Do not let the Huns across the gate.
I'm just so thrilled that we've connected. Again, back to Interview Valet, the people who you work with, they've done such a stunning job of bringing me people I have never met who I just fall in love with and want to be part of my life. Well, so thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much. And I'd love to give a shout out to Interview Valet as well. I took a look at my platform of what I wanted to accomplish in the world and made a list of the 3 things I'm good at and a list of the 25 things I'm not good at and made my stop doing list. And I hired them to get me out into the world. And they've connected me with awesome people like you because, that's what they do really well. it's not what I do really well. So what I have to do is I have to show up. I have to hopefully provide some value to the host, because my job is to make sure your audience has 1 to 3 takeaways from our conversation today. Interview of LA's job is to make sure I get this opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's nice because often when I have people on who I don't know and they just come on and they hawk their latest book or their latest thing, I don't use the podcast because it's just not interesting to me. So thank you for bringing your whole self to the show.
Oh, Mark, thank you for this opportunity. I'm really, really grateful, and I really enjoy that, and I love the fact that we're both baseball fans. But I love the fact too that your willingness to be authentic, your willingness to talk about 30 years ago, you made a different choice in your life, and now look where you are. And so many, if more people would just open up and share that, it makes it so much more relatable person to person. And I feel like we've really related for your audience today, and I want to thank you for this opportunity.
So I want to share something that I've never shared on the show before. Is I was sitting and meditating one day, and I was sitting on my cushion. I was just feeling so grateful for what I get to do, and I said, God, really, thank you. In spite of all my flaws and all my shortcomings and all the fuck ups I've done in my life, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. And in this booming voice, that's something out of a freaking movie, just says, I chose you because of all your shortcomings, because of all your fuck ups. I was like, holy shit. Like, I never had such a direct thing. So I've never shared that on the show because I don't want people to think I'm absolutely insane.
It's so true, though.
But yeah,
our mess becomes our message.
Totally.
And the more we talk about the ugliest parts, people see that, they resonate, and they connect with that. Because the most beautiful people in the world feel ugly. The most successful people in the world feel unsuccessful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if we can go out and we can lead by example, it's just our story. I'm not saying you have to buy my story. I'm not saying our stories are similar, but it's my story. You've got your story, Mark. And when we share that, I think it's just a gift of abundance to others.
Great. So I don't want Todd to go. That's why I keep adding on to the show. But I know you got to go to work or you got to go take care of something. So I love you. I appreciate your time and your attention. Take care of yourself and each other. Have a great rest of the day.